Hey everyone, and welcome back to our Space Engineers Survival Series, Part 3. So in the second video, we got a start on our basic survival platform. So our goal in this one is to get some power to this platform, get a basic assembler built, get a basic refinery built, maybe get some power storage in the form of a battery, and maybe some storage in the form of a small cargo container. But first, we'll go ahead and get started with the power. So when it comes to Space Engineers, you have 4 different possibilities for power. So I'm going to flip over to my, what I'm going to, I guess I'll call my power toolbar. And there are 4 different blocks here for power production. The first one is the wind turbine. Okay, perks to the wind turbine. Compared to a solar cell, it is a little bit better in terms of resources, not quite so resource intensive. As long as you have an atmosphere, it will generate power 24/7, so you never have to worry about having any period of time when you're not producing power. And then, of course, the drawback is if you happen to be in a place like the moon or some other place where there's little to no atmosphere, they're not going to be very effective, if effective at all. And so if you find yourself in that circumstance, you're going to need a solar panel. Okay, well, solar panels, they have the advantage of not needing an atmosphere. However, they do need the sun. And of course, with a day-night cycle in a game, during those night cycles, you're not going to be able to produce energy. Also, in some ways, they are a little bit more resource intensive than what the wind turbines are. And in addition to the solar cell, because you do have those day-night cycles where you will not be producing power, you also need a battery as quick as you can get one as well. So that's kind of another drawback to working with the solar cells. But those are the 2 early game methods for generating power. What I would call a mid-game one option is the hydrogen engine. Okay, the hydrogen engine basically looks like a great big, I guess a V10, if you want to look at it that way. But it is it's a means that if you have access to a lot of ice and are able to produce hydrogen reliably and consistently, the hydrogen engine is another alternative for power. It does not rely on the wind, it does not rely on the sun, and unlike the other 2, it can put out up to 5 megawatts of power. So it gives you a bit more energy. Again, it is somewhat resource intensive, especially compared to the other 2, but a lot more stable than the other 2, not relying on wind or sun. Okay, and then the final power production block that I would say is late game is the nuclear reactor. Okay, the nuclear reactor is probably your best in terms of power output. The biggest drawback to it is expense in terms of building, and also you need uranium, and uranium at this point is only found on asteroids. You can't find it on the planets anymore. Okay, small reactors come in small varieties and big varieties, and there's a couple different types of blocks depending on the exact DLCs you might have available. Okay, but we are going to go with a wind turbine. Okay, now a wind turbine, clearance does matter. Okay, so when you're starting out with a wind turbine, the first thing you want to do is place it up on some blocks. Basically, we are going to build a tower for it. So I'm going to come around here to my and I have 3 steel plates currently in my inventory. I want to put this wind turbine roughly 10 blocks up off the ground. So I'm going to go ahead and queue up another 7. So queue up another 7 steel plates for our use. And once those are done, there we go. Okay, we're going to head on over here to our platform, and I'm going to go ahead and build a tower out of those blocks. So fire up the old jetpack. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 of them. All right, so there is our tower that we're going to go ahead and place our turbine on. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the G key. I'm going to type in wind here to do a search, and here is our wind turbine. So notice the list of materials that we're going to need for those. Interior plates, motors, construction components, girders, and computers. Now, if you have a memory like mine, you're going to be constantly coming back and saying, now what did I need to build next for my wind turbine? One thing you can do is Space Engineers has what they call a build planner in it. And what that allows me to do is allows me to queue up various things, and then I can go to my survival kit and tell it basically, hey, make this stuff, and it'll just go ahead and automatically produce the things that I need for my wind turbine. So with the wind turbine selected, I'm just going to go here, hit that plus sign, and now I have a single wind turbine queued up in my build planner. I'm going to go back over here. Now if I click the middle mouse button, it will try to withdraw all the stuff that I need for it. And you notice popping up at the bottom there, it said I cannot withdraw, and then it gave me a list of all the things that it can't withdraw at this point. So to get it to begin the production of all those items that I'm going to need for my wind turbine, if I push the shift mouse button and click the middle mouse button, now notice it says all components were successfully put into production. And if I click there and go to the production tab, I can see that all of these things are there ready to be produced. However, notice I'm going to be short some iron ingots. So what I'm going to have to do while that thing is doing its production, I'm going to jog on over to our stone mining hole here and begin the process of pulling some more stone out of here, because I do not have enough raw materials at this point to go ahead and finish making my wind turbine. So I'm just going to go here and do some digging. Get some more stuff, so gather this up. A little bit more digging. Okay, grab that stone.
Inventory full.
Okay, there's my handy assistant telling me my inventory is full. It's time to jog back over to my survival pod. Drop that stone into the kit, and now it will begin the process of processing that stone and getting me some more raw materials. So I'm going to jog back over here, and while it's doing its work, I'm going to go ahead and continue mining. Mining by hand is definitely the slow way to do it.
Inventory full.
Once we get our basic platform set up with some basic with our basic refinery, basic assembler, we can go ahead and work on the process of getting some form of mining craft built. So we don't have to mine by hand, but rather we'll have some form of little miner that we can use to gather our raw materials. Perhaps at some point, if I continue doing this, I'll have to look into some video editing software so I can edit these boring bits out, so you don't have to watch me dig while we work our way through our video here. But get those put back in, and we still have a bunch of stuff under construction. Now, what I can do also while I'm waiting, I can go up here. Now that I have some of those initial materials, I can go over here and actually go ahead and place our wind turbines. So I'm going to float up here to the very top of our tower, place that wind turbine, get my welder out, and if I click on that, I will deposit what materials I've got ready and waiting to get my wind turbine going. So still kind of waiting for that construction to take place. While that's crunching, I run back here to our rock mining hole and pick up some more stuff. One thing about my hole digging is I never seem to dig them very straight. Still got a bit more space, grab a bit more. There we go, inventory full. going up. Just 3 interior plates left. I'll flip that over so it'll take care of those first. There we go. That should be all the stuff we need for our wind turbine. Notice it says all components were successfully withdrawn. So break out the welder, fire up the jetpack, head on up top, and weld it together. For some reason it claims I need more motors. I'm not sure why that is. Try this again. Admittedly, sometimes the build planner can behave kind of wonky. I'm not sure why. There we go. Now we're ready to roll. So now I just click on it and weld it on up. Alright, and now we have a power source for our basic platform. So, can't say 100% how much juice we're generating right now, but one thing about it is the faster that thing spins, the more energy that we're generating. It's one of the key things with our wind turbines is we do want to give them plenty of ground clearance and plenty of clearance from each other as well. So if I need to build a second wind turbine to provide additional power for our platform, I will want to space things out, usually 7 to 8 blocks between towers. Wind turbine towers is a good amount of spacing to get in order to use in order to get your optimal output. Alright, so now that our turbine has some, now that we have some power, the next step is going to be to grab a basic assembler. Okay, and another thing, I guess since it just dropped in, you'll notice over here, kind of in green, we have an unknown signal that's 2.37 kilometers away. Okay, what these basically are they're little, I guess for lack of a better way to say it, they're basically little satellites that float down from orbit, and they usually have some goodies in them. So we're going to go ahead and investigate this. I grabbed my hydrogen bottle to be sure I'll have enough gas to get there and back. So we're going to turn things on and head that way. So we have some fairly rough terrain here as well. Oh, there's some ice. So we have a place we can grab ice for hydrogen before we get to before we go to a lake. So that's a good thing. Here we have this unknown signal. Notice it is parachuting down basically like we did. And we are probably going to have to chase it down the hill before it settles in and parks. Sometimes you can get in front of them and stop them. Sometimes you can't. Maybe this is a good idea. Maybe it isn't. Yeah, I can sort of stop it, but the problem is it's going to roll because this is a fairly steep slope. So we're going to spend some time following this thing down. Oh, got a new style of welder. That's kind of nice. So Monday, April 28th, a new update pack for Space Engineers dropped with some new blocks in it. And our little thing here has some of those new blocks. This one right there is one of them. More of a decorative one than anything else, I think. If I can steady it here. Unfortunately, this is kind of a round thing. See if I can cut some of these blocks off here. Oh, I did manage to stop it. Good. Well, so I can carve it off to get some steel plates, which is nice. Also on this is, that must be on the other bottom side, but there's also a small cargo container on these that usually contains some goodies. Whether it be space credits or maybe some materials. Go ahead and kind of dig up the steel plates. There's construction components. Parachute hatch, and kind of hack that off. Go. There's that. Okay, now the batteries is somewhat of a unique block because notice that the power cells are highlighted in red. So when I grind this battery down, I will not get the power cells back. Normally in Space Engineers, when you grind down a block, you'll get back all of the different pieces components that block is made of, except for power cells and batteries. Okay, so you'll notice in here I've got some raw materials. I got some silicon, got some cobalt. That's actually quite valuable to us for later on once we start looking at building certain things. And got some space credits. Cold hard cash. Now we just need a place to spend it. I'm gonna finish grinding this up to get all these raw materials, mostly steel plates, but that's a good thing because steel plates are probably the most basic of the building components in the game. Alright, there we go. So put that grinder away, fire up the jetpack, and head back towards our respawn pod. Actually, what I think I'm going to do since I'm here, I'm going to drop in. I am going to break the drill out and load up on a little bit of ice. Not getting very much with each one, but we're getting some. Don't worry too much about marking this spot. So we really want to, we can make an ice mine later. So there's a little extra ice now that I can use to reload the jetpack. Alright, so flying back and setting down. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. I'm going to toss the ice in, and I'm going to toss my hydrogen bottle in there. So now I got a little bit more ice for our stuff. And I've got a bunch of other things. Now I really don't have too many places to put that in my survival pod, so I'm going to hop in the seat, because the seat does have its own inventory. And I'm just going to throw all that stuff into the seat, and that'll make some good storage for us while we wait. Alright, so now the next thing we want to take care of, now that we have some power, we want to go ahead and get a basic assembler put up. So just like we did before, I'm going to go over here to G, type in oops, one too many S's there. Assembler, there we go. So here is our basic assembler. So as we did before, I'm going to go ahead and click the plus sign to put that into the build planner. Notice it has steel plates, construction components, and motors to start with. Well, we had some of those from our chair. So I'm going to hop back in the chair and open that inventory. So there's some steel plates. There was some motors. I know we needed those. I think we needed computers and construction components for our basic assembler. So now we have a few of the components we need that we got off of that. And so I'm going to tab over here to where our basic assembler is at. Okay, now for our basic assembler, here's our block. And on this block, we only have that one spot where there is a conveyor access port. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of place the assembler up next to our wind turbine tower. I'm going to rotate it using the insert, home, end, page up, page down, delete keys until I find where that opening is. And then I'm going to place that opposite of there. So there's where our basic assembler is going to be. I'm going to go up, I'm going to hit the button and place any components that I already had in there. And then I am going to go ahead and right click on there, and then what that does is it will add to the build planner any remaining components that I need to complete that basic assembler. And we're going to jog over here like we did before, middle mouse button just in case there's anything there to pull out, and then shift middle mouse button to begin that construction process. Okay, and like before when we were building our wind turbine, we're going to need all kinds of stone to get some iron ingots, so it's back to the hole and back to digging. I don't want to build a basic refinery just yet, so change my toolbar, and start digging again. So just kind of hammering things out and getting that stone for raw materials. What I might do between this video and the next is I might cheat a little bit and do some mining off camera, so I have materials needed before you start the video, and I just got to not get lost in my own stone mine here. It has been known to happen. Okay, so back to our survival pod and our survival kit. Toss that stone in there, and just keep doing that back and forth run until we have enough stuff. Alright, so start digging some more.
Inventory full.
Once we can get those basic assembler, basic refiner, and everything of that nature put up on our survival platform there, things will start going a little bit quicker. The basic refinery is a lot faster in terms of refining stuff. And another thing we'll be able to do once we get that basic refinery up is we might be able to go out and do some scouting for some raw materials. There is a lot of the materials such as iron and silicon and nickel and cobalt. Those also are located in veins underground, and sometimes even in surface boulders that we can take our drill and mine. So we're not so once we can get those and process something beside, get that, especially that basic refinery, and process something besides stone, we'll be able to go a lot faster. It's processing the raw ore gives us a lot better yield than just stone does. And also, what just dropped? Another unknown signal. So we are going to go and investigate that. Because if we can get some good supplies out of that, that will, again, save us some time because we won't have to mine quite as much. There we go, a little hitch in the system there, but we are back in action. Alright, so this is another style. It's actually a really new one. I don't think I've seen this kind before. Alright, what do we have here? Stop it from rolling. This is actually one of the newest ones that is part of the series. So we have, let's see, what do we got? Some kind of storage unit. And what we got in here? Oh, an improved grinder. That can always be handy. And some displays. That'll be nice. So notice this particular grinder here has a little chevron, has the beginning of a chevron on it. That's the next notch up from the grinder I have, so that one will actually work better. So what I'm going to do is I am going to go to G, go to Character Tools, and I'm going to grab my enhanced grinder and drag it down onto my toolbar. So I can use that enhanced grinder instead of my original one. I'm just going to swap those, and we'll put the original one into storage. That was a nice find. On top of of course, the materials that I'm going to be able to get from this little signal here. So just go ahead and, so they got some new stuff on this one, which is kind of nice. Just highlighting some of those new blocks that are available, both decorative blocks and functional ones. Some of these thinner blocks, what can be annoying with them is trying to find the exact place to hit the block to actually grind it down. At this early stage in the game, it's worth the trouble because the raw materials, it's really nice to have those raw materials. Alright, so stuff collected, back to the respawn pod that I'm sure is hopefully happily working along on our raw materials. Alright, here we are back by our pods. So once again, I'm going to put our tank here. Go take a seat in our chair, open its inventory, and make a deposit. I'll also drop that in there. And then we'll head back and see how the survival kit is doing on production. Still has a fair amount of stuff to do. Let's pop out what it's gotten done thus far. Head back over here, click it into place. So we've got any of those components in here. So I know steel plates was something it used, computers was something it was using. Grab some motors. I think that's all it could potentially use, so let's go ahead and grab over here, click things in. So there's a little bit of extra stuff put in place. And we still had a bunch of steel plates left over, which is good because steel plates will also form the basis of our refinery. Alright, back to the stone mine. Nabbing that unknown signal did help us a little bit and gave us something else to do too. Something to do besides watch me dig rock. But now it's back to digging rock. Dig, 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 dig. Grab those raw materials. Get turned around in my own stone mine.
Inventory full.
As the old assistant, here my inventory is full, so back to the pod. Probably make a couple more trips doing this, just so we maybe hopefully build up a little bit of excess. What I think I might do is I'm going to go into the production and I'm going to right click on all these things to clear them. Hit the G key, I'm going to right click on this to clear it, and then I'm going to go back up with my welder, right click, because we don't need quite as many materials now since we went ahead and we grabbed that unknown signal. So then re-put those materials back into production. So now I need to jog back over here, back into the hole, start digging some more. Now, one thing I definitely don't claim to be as one of the most efficient players at this particular game. I will quite often do things this slow and the hard way, unfortunately, but it does get the job done. Okay, anything left over in there? Nope. Alright, do some more digging. Again, not get lost in my own stone mine, which I can easily do. My apologies if I'm whipping the mouse around a little too quick. As I mentioned in the first video of the series, this is like my third attempt at a YouTube video, so with time and experience, I am assuming I will get better at this.
Inventory full.
Assuming I keep doing it. We'll see what happens. Back over here. Toss the stones in. Oops. Get back here again. I still have extra. Now toss it in. Yeah, I might as well empty my inventory. It looks like it's getting along pretty good with that assembler. Yeah, do a little more digging. I'll try not to top things off completely this time. Again, if you've never tried this game, it admittedly does have a really steep learning curve. I mentioned in the first run that the first video here that I didn't like this game at first, but it really, when I came back to it and I really managed to get it down and figure it out, it's become one of my favorites. It's my most played game on Steam now at this point, and I'm just really enjoying it. That's why I'm doing this video series, if nothing else, to maybe introduce somebody new to this game and maybe something that they'll really discover that they enjoy. Okay, so our production is now completed, so I'll click that. All components successfully withdrawn. So I'm going to pop those on there. With this particular welder, it does take a while to weld things up, but now, once it gets there, we now have a basic assembler available to us. So what's the advantage? Excuse me. What is the advantage of the basic assembler? Well, if I come here and I click on our conveyor port and I click on production, notice I got a lot more stuff I can build. Okay, there are a lot more things that I can build now for my basic components. Plus, on top of that, if we go back to our seat in our survival pod, go to its inventory, I'm going to grab all of these raw components that we had here. So those right there. Okay, so there's all those raw components. Hop out of our seat and over to our basic assembler. And I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to place all of those in here for a moment. Now, another thing I want to take a quick look at under the control panel is basic assembler. So currently it's at idle. Okay, so required input 1 kilowatt, just to have it there at idle, not really doing anything. But when it starts producing, I'm going to need 280 kilowatts of energy in order to run this particular block or this particular machine. So if we can also now click on our wind turbine. So now we can get some stats on the wind turbine. So if we take a look at it, wind clearance is optimal, which is good. Current output 1 kilowatt, because that's all I need. Notice its maximum output 381 kilowatts basically. Okay, so that tells me that under current conditions, that single wind turbine will give me plenty of power to run my basic assembler. So another advantage to the basic assembler, aside of being able to make more of the components that I'm going to need, is that if I have some extra components and need some raw materials, notice up here I've got two options, assembling and disassembling. Now I can take all of these components that are here in my assembler, I can click disassemble all, and what that's going to do is that's going to go ahead, it's going to break down all of those individual components for me into the raw materials that they're made of. So if I have components that I'm not using, I can go ahead and I can break those down, and I can get some of those raw materials back to make other things that I might need to, say, make a basic refinery with. And so that's one advantage that the standard assembler has over the survival kit over here in our survival pod. So another thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go ahead, I'm going to grab all the current materials that are in the survival pod as well. I'm going to bring them over here, and I'm going to go ahead and place those into the assembler as well, because then I'll have those immediately on hand, and we can break those down and have them ready to go. Now going back to the control panel, now notice required input is 280 kilowatts since the assembler is now running, and if I go to the wind turbine, notice it is currently outputting 280 kilowatts. And our assembler is done with its task, so now it's down to 1 kilowatt. So what I'm going to need to do now is, if I skip over to the production tab, and I want to go back from disassembling now to assembling. So now I'm ready to build any of these components that are here. And notice that a couple of them are in in red. So for the metal grids, we're missing those cobalt ingots. Remember, we found some of those on that one unknown signal. And for the medical components, we're missing silver. But all the other ones, those are all set to go, and I can build some of those anytime with my basic assembler. So I'm going to go back down now to the seat, hit the inventory. So notice we do have in here some raw materials as well. We have our silicon, and we have our cobalt. And to save some space, I'm going to move that grinder back to the seat. So now we also have some cobalt. So cobalt will allow us to build metal grids. Metal grids are important to getting storage on large grid, because the cargo containers associated with a large grid require metal grids, and so that'll come in very handy there. All right, so now we have our basic survival platform. We have some power with our wind turbine. We have some basic assembling ability because we have our basic assembler. And so I think this is where we're going to go ahead and call it an episode. So in the next one, we'll go ahead and begin the process of getting a basic refinery built, which will allow us to refine materials much more effectively, and perhaps look into getting a battery built for our base as well. Because once we get that basic refinery on there, if I want to run both the refinery and the assembler at once, one wind turbine is not going to cut it. So we have a couple options. We can put a second wind turbine on there to provide us more power, or as another alternative, right now this turbine's only outputting that 1 kilowatt. It can put out up to close to 400 kilowatts, which we could go ahead and store in a battery for later use. So basic refinery, and probably a battery coming up in the next episode. Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this one, and take care, and we'll catch you in the next episode.